The great hall was filled with beings from across the galaxy. Some were tall and covered in armor. Others floated like clouds of light. Some looked like giant insects, and others were just voices that came from glowing crystals. They all sat in a huge circular room made of clear material that looked like glass but was stronger than steel. This was the Galactic Council, where the most powerful species in the universe made decisions that affected billions of worlds. In the very back of the room, almost hidden in the shadows, sat 3 humans. Nobody was looking at them. Nobody ever looked at them. The humans had been part of this council for almost 50 years, but they might as well have been invisible. The other species barely remembered they existed. Kate Morrison sat straight in her chair, trying to look confident, even though she felt small and unimportant. She was the human ambassador, which meant she was supposed to speak for all of Earth. But what good was speaking when nobody listened? Next to her sat Alex Turner, a military officer who kept checking his notes. They had come to ask for something simple. They wanted permission to use certain space routes for trade. It would help Earth's economy and make travel faster. It was a reasonable request. The being in charge of the meeting was called Executor Jen. It looked like a floating diamond that pulsed with light. When it spoke, its voice came out in waves that made the air vibrate. Jen turned slightly toward the human section of the room. It was a quick movement, the kind you make when you remember something you forgot to do. "The humans may speak now," Jen said. Its voice sounded bored. Kate stood up. She had practiced her speech many times. She knew exactly what to say. She started explaining why humans needed access to the trade routes. She talked about how it would benefit everyone, not just Earth. She used facts and numbers. She was clear and professional. But before she could even finish her third sentence, Jen interrupted her. "We have heard your request," Jen said. "The Council does not find enough reason to change the current agreements. Next matter." Just like that, it was over. Kate felt her face grow hot with frustration. She slowly sat back down. Alex put his hand on her shoulder gently. This was the 3rd time in 3 months that they had asked for something and been turned down without really being heard. The other species in the room had already moved on to the next topic. They had forgotten the humans were even there. The problem was simple. Nobody in the galaxy thought humans were important. Earth was just another small planet going around an ordinary star in a corner of space that nobody cared about. Humans did not have special powers. They could not read minds or move objects with their thoughts. They could not live forever or travel through walls. Compared to species that had been exploring the galaxy for millions of years, humans were new and unremarkable. They were just ordinary. Later that night, Kate stood alone in the observation room of the human ship called the Horizon's Edge. She stared out at the stars through the large window. Space looked peaceful from here, but Kate knew better. Out there were thousands of species, all of them more powerful than humanity, all of them looking down on Earth. Tyler Brooks walked into the room carrying 2 cups of coffee. He was another officer on the ship, someone Kate had known for years. He handed her one of the cups and stood next to her, looking out at the same view. "Bad day?" Tyler asked. Kate took a sip of the coffee. It was hot and bitter, but it helped her feel a little better. "They do not even see us, Tyler. To them, we are just taking up space. We are not important enough to matter." Tyler thought about this for a moment. Then he said something that surprised her. "Maybe that is not such a bad thing." Kate turned to look at him. "What do you mean?" "Being underestimated," Tyler explained. "It gives us an advantage. While they ignore us, we can watch them and learn. We can figure out how things work. We can grow stronger without anyone paying attention. And then one day, when we are ready, they will look at us and realize they made a mistake." Kate smiled a little. "You sound like my grandfather. He used to say that you should never stop your enemy when they are making a mistake." "Smart man," Tyler said. They stood there quietly for a while, drinking their coffee and watching the stars. Neither of them knew that everything was about to change. They did not know that soon, the entire galaxy would be forced to see humanity in a completely different way. Back on Earth, Millions of people went about their normal lives. They went to work, spent time with their families, and dreamed about the future. Most of them did not think much about the Galactic Council or the other species out in space. They trusted that their leaders were doing their best to represent humanity among the stars. But there were some people on Earth who understood the situation better. In military bases and research centers, scientists and soldiers were working hard. They studied the other species. They learned about their technologies and their ways of fighting. They practiced and trained and prepared. They knew that being overlooked was temporary. They knew that someday humanity would need to prove itself. Admiral Laura Grant was one of those people. She commanded the Human Defense Fleet, which was small compared to the fleets of other species. But what her ships lacked in number, they made up for in other ways. Her crews were well trained. Her officers were smart and creative. And her ships, while not as fancy as alien vessels, were reliable and tough. Laura had been in the military for 30 years. She had seen humanity go from barely understanding space travel to building ships that could cross the galaxy. She had watched as other species treated humans like children who did not belong at the adult table. And she had waited patiently for the day when humanity would show everyone what they were really capable of. That day was coming soon. Laura could feel it. Something was going to happen that would change everything. She did not know what it would be or when it would come. But she was ready. Her fleet was ready. And when the moment arrived, humanity would be prepared to step out of the shadows and into the light. The galaxy had spent decades ignoring humanity. The powerful species had dismissed them as unimportant. They had looked at Earth and seen nothing special. They had made the mistake of thinking that being ordinary meant being weak. They had forgotten one important truth about humans. Throughout their history, humans had faced bigger, stronger enemies. They had survived ice ages and diseases and wars. They had climbed to the top of their world not because they were the strongest or the fastest, but because they were smart and stubborn and refused to give up. Those same qualities that had helped humanity survive on Earth were still there, just waiting to be shown to the rest of the galaxy. And soon, very soon, everyone would see what happens when you underestimate the quiet species from the small blue planet. Everyone would learn that being overlooked was the biggest advantage humanity could have asked for. Because while nobody was watching, humans had been getting ready. And now, they were about to show the galaxy who they really were. The Pathfinder shook violently as another blast hit the shields. Sparks flew from one of the bridge consoles. Maya Chen held onto her station and reported the damage. "Shields at 40%, Captain. We cannot take much more of this." Nina knew they were running out of time. The Krell Raiders were getting closer, their weapons tearing through the Pathfinder's defenses piece by piece. She could surrender. She could hand over the Valith and save her crew. It would be the smart thing to do. But when Nina looked around her bridge and saw the faces of her crew, she knew none of them would accept that choice. They were humans. They might be underestimated. They might be dismissed as weak, but they were not cowards. "Keep transmitting that distress signal," Nina ordered, "and prepare to ram the lead raider ship if we have to. If we are going down, we are taking them with us." Her crew did not argue or question. They just nodded and prepared to do what needed to be done. But before Nina could give the final order, Sam shouted from his station, "Captain, new contacts entering the system. Multiple ships. They are broadcasting human identification codes." Nina spun toward the main view screen. 5 ships appeared out of faster-than-light travel, their engines glowing bright as they decelerated. At the front was a heavy cruiser, bigger and more powerful than anything the Pathfinder could hope to be. It bore the symbol of Earth's defense fleet and the name Defiant painted across its hull. And commanding that ship was Admiral Laura Grant herself. The Krell Raiders immediately stopped their attack. They scattered in confusion, trying to figure out what was happening. How had human reinforcements arrived so fast? How had they known where to come? Admiral Grant's voice came through the communication channel, calm and cold. "Krell vessels, this is Admiral Laura Grant of the Earth Defense Fleet. You have attacked a vessel under human protection. Stand down immediately or we will destroy you." The Krell Raider leader responded with anger in his voice. "This is not your concern, human. These Valith belong to us. Leave now or we will teach you what happens when you interfere with the Krell Syndicate." There was a pause. When Admiral Grant spoke again, her voice was like ice. "Then let me teach you something about humans. We do not abandon our people. We do not back down from bullies. All ships weapons free. Show them what happens when they threaten us." What happened next was not really a battle. It was more like a lesson. The human ships moved with perfect coordination. They did not charge in blindly or rely on overwhelming firepower. Instead, they used tactics and strategy that the Krell raiders had never seen before. The Defiant and her escort ships wove through the enemy formation like dancers, always where the Krell did not expect them to be. They used the nebula to their advantage. The thick clouds of gas made sensors unreliable, but the human ships had practiced fighting in these conditions. They appeared out of the nebula, fired with surgical precision, and disappeared before the raiders could respond. When the Krell tried to use their sensors, the humans jammed them with electronic warfare. When the raiders fired their weapons, the humans had already moved. The human weapons were not individually more powerful than what other species used, but the humans fired them with incredible accuracy. Every shot hit exactly where it was supposed to. They targeted weapon systems, disabling the raiders' ability to fight. They hit engines, making it impossible for the Krell to run away. They avoided the crew areas, choosing to disable rather than kill. In less than 10 minutes, 3 Krell raider ships were floating dead in space. Their weapons were offline. Their engines were destroyed. Their crews were alive but helpless. The remaining 2 raiders turned and fled at maximum speed, abandoning their companions without a second thought. On the bridge of the Pathfinder, Nina's crew sat in stunned silence. They had just watched human ships do what should have been impossible. They had beaten 5 raider vessels without breaking a sweat, without losing a single ship, without even taking serious damage. "Sam," Nina said quietly, "make sure every second of that fight is recorded. Send it to the Galactic Council. I want everyone to see what just happened." "Already done, Captain," Sam replied with a wide grin on his face. Admiral Grant contacted the Pathfinder. "Captain Rodriguez, are you and your crew unharmed?" "We are intact, Admiral," Nina replied. "Thanks to you. How did you know we needed help?" "We were already on patrol in this sector when we picked up your distress signal. We came as fast as we could," Laura explained. "Good work holding them off until we arrived." "You saved those Valith lives with your courage." Nina felt a surge of pride. "Thank you, Admiral." The human ships escorted the Pathfinder and its Valith passengers to safety. Along the way, they collected the disabled Krell raiders. Those pirates would face trial for their crimes. It was justice, not revenge. News of the engagement spread through the galaxy faster than light itself. Within hours, every species knew what had happened. The humans, the species everyone had been ignoring for decades, had just defeated the Krell Syndicate in open combat. They had done it decisively, professionally, and most importantly, they had done it to protect another species. The recordings from the battle were watched billions of times. Military analysts from dozens of species studied the human tactics, trying to understand how they had achieved such a complete victory. Politicians and leaders began asking questions. Who were these humans, really? What else were they capable of? On the Valith homeworld, Illuminator Vess addressed his people. He told them how the humans had risked their own lives to save Valith survivors, how Captain Rodriguez had refused to surrender even when facing certain death, how Admiral Grant had arrived like an avenging angel to defend those under human protection. The Valith were one of the founding members of the Galactic Council. When they spoke, others listened, and now they were speaking about humanity with respect and gratitude. Other species began to pay attention. The Krell civilization, the legitimate government that had nothing to do with the Syndicate pirates, sent an official message to Earth. They thanked humanity for dealing with a problem that had plagued their people for years. The Syndicate had been an embarrassment to all honorable Krell. Seeing them defeated brought relief. Back on Earth, people watched the news with amazement and pride. For so long, they had felt small and insignificant compared to the ancient civilizations of the galaxy. Now they saw that humanity had something those ancient civilizations had forgotten. Humans knew how to fight smart. They knew how to adapt, and they knew how to stand up for what was right, even when it was dangerous. Kate Morrison received a message from Executor Jen, the leader of the Galactic Council. It was brief and formal. "The Council wishes to schedule a meeting with the human delegation at your earliest convenience. We have matters to discuss." Kate smiled as she read the message. For the first time in 50 years, the council wanted to talk to humans. Really talk. Not dismiss them. Not ignore them. They wanted to discuss matters of importance. Tyler Brooks looked over her shoulder at the message. "Looks like things are about to change," he said. "They already have," Kate replied. "The galaxy just realized we exist. Now let us show them what we can do." The quiet species from the overlooked planet had finally been noticed, and nothing would ever be the same again. 3 months had passed since Kate's last failed attempt at the council. Life went on as usual for most humans. Ships traveled between Earth and the handful of colonies humanity had established. Scientists continued their research. And out in the far reaches of human-explored space, Captain Nina Rodriguez was having a very normal day until everything changed. Nina commanded a science vessel called the Pathfinder. It was not a warship. It was designed for exploration and research. Her crew spent their days studying stars, mapping asteroids, and collecting data about space. It was peaceful work, usually boring, and Nina liked it that way. She had seen enough excitement in her younger days. They were near something called the Epsilon Relay, which was just a fancy name for a junction point where several space routes crossed. Nina was in her quarters reading reports when her communications officer, Sam Holland, called her to the bridge. His voice sounded urgent. "Captain, you need to hear this," Sam said over the intercom. Nina reached the bridge within minutes. Sam was bent over his console, adjusting settings and trying to clean up a weak signal. "Captain, I am picking up a distress call. It is from a Valith trade convoy. They are in trouble in the Tarantus Nebula. The Valith were one of the oldest and most respected species in the galaxy. They looked like clouds of glowing gas that could think and talk. Their technology was incredibly advanced. If a Valith convoy was in trouble, something very bad must have happened." "How far away are they?" Nina asked. "About 2 hours at maximum speed," Sam replied. Nina made her decision immediately. "Set course for the nebula. Full speed, and contact Admiral Grant. Let her know what we are doing." The Pathfinder turned and accelerated toward the nebula. The crew moved quickly, preparing for whatever they might find. Nobody spoke much. They all knew this could be dangerous. Nebulas were thick clouds of gas and dust in space that made it hard to see and even harder to navigate. They were perfect places for ambushes. When they arrived at the nebula's edge, what they saw made Nina's stomach turn. The Valith convoy was destroyed. Huge cargo ships hung in space like broken toys. Their hulls were torn open, and their contents were spilling out into the void. Smaller escort ships floated nearby, dark and lifeless. Scorch marks covered every surface, the kind that came from weapons fire. "Sam, scan for survivors," Nina ordered. Sam worked his console frantically. After a tense minute, he looked up. "I am reading faint energy signatures from one of the escort ships. There might be survivors in an emergency shelter. Prepare a rescue team," Nina said. "And stay alert. Whatever did this might still be around." The rescue took 4 long hours. Nina's crew worked carefully, cutting through twisted metal and bypassing broken systems. Inside a reinforced compartment, they found 17 Valith survivors. The glowing clouds of gas that made up their bodies were flickering weakly, barely staying together. The crew transported them to the Pathfinder's medical bay, where Dr. Lisa Garrett had prepared special containment fields to keep them stable. Once the Valith were strong enough to communicate, Nina sat down with their leader. His name was Vess, and he spoke through a translator device that turned his thoughts into words humans could understand. "What happened out there?" Nina asked gently. Vess's glow pulsed in a way that seemed sad. "Pirates. The Krell Syndicate. They were waiting for us when we came out of the nebula. Our escorts tried to fight, but we never had a chance. The pirates demanded we surrender our cargo. When we refused, they started shooting at the civilian ships." Nina felt anger rising in her chest. The Krell Syndicate was a group of criminals who had broken away from the main Krell civilization. They spent their time raiding ships and stealing cargo. The Galactic Council knew about them, but had never done much to stop them. The big, powerful species considered them a minor problem, not worth the effort. "You are safe now," Nina told Vess. "We will get you home." "Thank you, Captain," Vess said quietly. "Your people have saved us when our own could not arrive in time. We will not forget this." Nina ordered her crew to set a course for Valith space, but before they could get very far, Sam's console started beeping urgently. "Captain, I have multiple ships approaching. Their configuration matches Krell Syndicate raiders." Nina's jaw tightened. The Pathfinder was not built for combat. It had a few weapons, but nothing that could stand up to a squadron of raiders. But she could not abandon the Valith survivors. She would not. All crew to battle stations, Nina announced over the ship's intercom. Helm, get us moving away from those contacts. Weapons, charge everything we have. And engineering, I need every bit of speed you can give me. The Krell ships closed in fast. There were 5 of them, all bigger and better armed than the Pathfinder. Their lead ship sent a message that Sam played over the bridge speakers. The voice was harsh and mocking. Human vessel, you have something that belongs to us. Give us the Valith and we will let you leave alive. Fight us and you will die with them. Nina stood up from her command chair. She looked around at her crew. They were all watching her, waiting to see what she would do. She saw determination on their faces. They knew what her answer would be before she spoke. This is Captain Nina Rodriguez of the Earthship Pathfinder. Those people are under our protection. If you want them, you will have to go through us. There was a pause. Then came the sound of laughter from the Krell ship. Your bravery is impressive, human, and completely pointless. The Krell raiders opened fire. Energy beams lanced across space and slammed into the Pathfinder's shields. The whole ship shook. Alarms started blaring. Maya Chen, the officer at the defense console, called out the bad news. Shields down to 60%. They are targeting our engines. Nina gripped her chair. The Krell wanted to disable them, not destroy them. They wanted the Valith alive so they could finish what they started. That gave Nina an idea. It was desperate, but it was all she had. Helm, evasive maneuvers. Make us hard to hit. Weapons, target their weapon systems, not their engines or hulls. I want to slow them down without killing anyone. And Sam, send out a wideband distress signal. I want everyone in this sector to know what is happening here. The Pathfinder began to dance. It twisted and turned through space in ways that surprised the Krell raiders. The human crew flew their ship with a creativity and unpredictability that no other species would have used. When the raiders expected them to run, they turned and fired. When the raiders thought they had them cornered, the humans found a way out. It could not last forever. The Pathfinder was taking damage. Shields were failing. Systems were breaking down. But the crew kept fighting. They bought time with every maneuver, every shot, every desperate second. And all the while, Sam's distress signal was broadcasting across space, telling anyone who would listen that humans needed help. Someone was listening, and help was already on the way. 3 weeks after the battle in the Tarantus Nebula, the Galactic Council gathered for an emergency session. The enormous chamber was buzzing with activity. Delegates from hundreds of worlds talked excitedly among themselves. For once, everyone had something interesting to discuss. And for the first time in decades, everyone wanted to hear what the humans had to say. Kate Morrison walked into the chamber alongside Admiral Laura Grant and Commander Tyler Brooks. The 3 humans moved with quiet confidence. Every eye in the room followed them. Some looked curious. Others looked worried. A few looked almost afraid. This was very different from the usual indifference Kate had grown used to. The humans were no longer sitting in the back corner where nobody could see them. They had been moved to a position near the center of the chamber, close to where the most powerful species sat. It was a small change, but everyone understood what it meant. Humanity's status had shifted. Executor Zhen called the meeting to order. The crystal being pulsed with light as it spoke. Ambassador Morrison, the Council has reviewed the recordings from your encounter with the Krell Syndicate. Your actions were unexpected. We would like to understand how you achieved such results. Kate stood at the speaker's platform. She spoke clearly and calmly. We did what any civilized species should do. We protected those who could not protect themselves. As for how we won the battle, Admiral Grant can explain our methods better than I can. Laura stepped forward. She was wearing her full military uniform, and she looked every bit the experienced commander she was. We won because we adapt. We study our enemies. We learn their patterns and find their weaknesses. We do not rely on having the biggest weapons or the strongest shields. We use strategy, creativity, and the willingness to never give up. A Krell representative stood up. This was Lord Kravix, a leader from the legitimate Krell government. His armor gleamed under the chamber's lights. The Syndicate has been a problem for my people for many years. Countless ships have been lost to their raids. Yet in a single battle, your small fleet neutralized them completely. This is remarkable, but it is also concerning. Such efficiency in combat suggests a species bred for war. Tyler spoke up. "We come from a difficult world, Lord Kravix. Earth has never been easy for us. We had to fight for everything. Resources, territory, survival itself. That struggle taught us to be resourceful. It taught us to think creatively and work together. Those are the skills we bring to space." One of the Thraxian representatives spoke next. The Thraxians were a species that shared a collective mind. When one spoke, it spoke for millions. "Your history shows constant warfare. You have fought each other for your entire existence. Now you bring those instincts to the galaxy. How can we be certain you will not turn those weapons against us?" The question hung in the air. The chamber went silent. Everyone waited to hear how the humans would respond. Kate took a deep breath and answered, "You are right. We have a violent history. We have fought wars over land, over beliefs, over resources. We have made terrible mistakes. But that same history taught us the value of peace. We learned the cost of war. We learned that cooperation is stronger than conflict. Yes, we are good at fighting. We had to be to survive, but we are also good at building, at healing, at working together, and we choose peace whenever possible." Laura added her voice. "Look at what we did with the Krell Syndicate. We could have destroyed their ships completely. We could have killed everyone aboard, but we did not. We disabled them. We captured them so they could face justice. That shows restraint. That shows we understand the difference between necessary force and cruelty." Illuminator Vess rose to speak. The Valith leader glowed brightly as he addressed the council. "I was there. I saw what the humans did. They did not have to help us. They gained nothing from saving my convoy. They risked their lives for strangers, and when the raiders attacked them, they could have surrendered. Instead, they chose to fight knowing they would probably die. This is not the behavior of a species that seeks domination. This is the behavior of heroes." Several other species murmured in agreement. Not everyone was convinced, but the mood in the chamber was shifting. Executor Zen pulsed with what might have been approval. "What do you propose, Ambassador Morrison? What does humanity want from this council?" Kate had prepared for this moment. She knew this was her chance to change everything for humanity. She spoke with confidence. "We propose a galactic security initiative. The Krell Syndicate is just one of many pirate groups that plague this galaxy. Smaller species suffer constantly from raids and attacks. The Council has ignored this problem because it does not affect the powerful species. We want to change that," she continued. "Give us authorization to coordinate anti-piracy operations. We will provide training to other species. We will offer tactical support. We will patrol the dangerous sectors. In exchange, we ask for access to the trade routes we have requested for years. And we want a permanent seat on the Council Security Committee." The chamber erupted in debate. Some species objected immediately. They called it a power grab. They said humanity was trying to use fear to gain influence. But others supported the idea. The Valith backed it completely. So did many of the smaller species who had suffered from piracy for decades. They saw this as their chance for protection. The debate went on for hours. Arguments flew back and forth. Some species worried about giving humans too much authority. Others argued that humanity had proven it could be trusted. Finally, Executor Jen called for a vote. The vote was close, very close. But when the final count was announced, the proposal had passed. Humanity would be granted authority to coordinate galactic security operations. They would get their trade route access. And Kate Morrison would have a seat on the security committee. As the humans left the council chambers, they walked past delegates who had never given them a second look before. Now those delegates watched them carefully, some with respect, some with hope, and some with suspicion and fear. "Everything is different now," Tyler said quietly as they walked. Laura nodded. "We just showed them we are not the weak species they thought we were. Now we have to prove we deserve their trust." Over the next few months, human forces began their work. They coordinated with other species to hunt down pirate groups. They shared their tactics and trained allied crews in human combat methods. Everywhere they went, pirate activity dropped dramatically. Ships that had once been afraid to travel certain routes now moved freely. Trade increased. Smaller species began to prosper. The Krell Syndicate tried several times to strike back at humanity. Each attempt failed worse than the last. Human ships seemed to know where the pirates would be before they got there. Human tactics always had an answer to whatever the Syndicate tried. After losing dozens more ships, the Syndicate leadership realized they could not win. They sent a message to Earth asking for terms of surrender. The galaxy watched in amazement. The pirate threat that had existed for centuries was simply ending, not through genocide or total war, but through superior strategy and determination. The humans offered the syndicate members a choice: face trial for their crimes and serve their sentences, or rejoin legitimate Krell society and live peacefully. Most chose peace. Humanity's reputation grew with each success. But not everyone was happy about it. In the shadows of galactic politics, certain powers began to worry. The humans were rising too fast. They were gaining too much influence. They were becoming important players when they should have remained insignificant. Some species started to ask difficult questions. What would humanity do with all this power? What would happen if they decided to use their military skills for conquest instead of protection? What if the galaxy had made a terrible mistake by giving them so much authority? These concerns grew louder with each passing week. Secret meetings were held. Alliances were discussed. Some of the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy began to see humanity not as a helper, but as a potential threat. The species that had been overlooked for so long was now being watched very carefully. And not everyone liked what they saw. Kate could feel the tension building. She saw it in the way some delegates avoided her in the hallways. She heard it in the whispered conversations that stopped when she entered a room. Humanity had proven itself capable, but now they had to prove they could be trusted with that capability. The next test was coming, and it would determine whether humanity would be accepted as a true member of the galactic community, or whether they would be seen as something to fear. The Thraxian species had existed for 30 million years. Their collective mind connected billions of individual beings across thousands of planets. They had watched civilizations rise and fall like waves on an ocean. They had seen species come and go, empires built and destroyed. In all that vast experience, the Thraxians had never known fear. But now, for the first time in their ancient history, they were worried about humanity. The Thraxian delegation called for a private meeting of the Council's inner circle. Only the founding species were invited to attend. And humanity, because they had earned their place on the Security Committee. Kate Morrison, Admiral Laura Grant, and Commander Tyler Brooks entered a smaller chamber where the galaxy's most powerful beings waited for them. The Thraxian speaker was called Hive Coordinator Prime. When it spoke, its voice carried the thoughts of countless minds working together. We must discuss the human situation. Kate kept her expression neutral, but inside she was alert. What situation would that be, Coordinator? Your species has shown military abilities far beyond what we expected. Your tactics are unprecedented. Your willingness to engage in combat is remarkable, and your rate of expansion across the galaxy is concerning. In just a few months, you have established a presence in 17 sectors. You have trained allied forces. You have created a network of military outposts. This level of growth is unusual for such a young species. Lord Kravix, the Krell representative, nodded his massive armored head. The Coordinator speaks truth. What took most civilizations centuries to achieve, you have done in months. You turned a centuries-old pirate problem into ancient history. You have more influence now than species that have been part of this council for thousands of years. We must ask ourselves why you were able to do this so quickly and what it means for the future. Laura spoke calmly but firmly. We never claimed to be weak. You simply never bothered to ask what we were capable of. While you were ignoring us, we were learning. We studied every species in this galaxy. We understood your technologies, your methods, your weaknesses. When we finally acted, we did so with full knowledge and preparation. Illuminator Vess, the Valith representative, spoke up in defense of humanity. This is paranoia. The humans have done nothing wrong. They saved my people. They eliminated the pirate threat that this council ignored for generations. They have protected the weak and brought order to chaos. Why are we questioning their success instead of celebrating it? The Coordinator's collective voice took on a somber tone. Because we have analyzed human history carefully. Your species spent thousands of years in near constant warfare with itself. You created weapons capable of destroying your entire world. You nearly drove yourselves to extinction multiple times. This is not the history of a peaceful species. This is the history of warriors who have now brought those instincts to the stars. The chamber fell silent. Every being present understood the weight of what had just been said. They were afraid of what humanity might become, afraid of what they might do with their growing power. Kate stood slowly. She looked around the room, meeting the eyes or sensors of each representative. When she spoke, her voice was steady and honest. You are absolutely right. We have a violent history. We fought wars over everything you can imagine. We made mistakes that killed millions. We came close to destroying ourselves. But you know what that history also taught us? The true cost of war, the value of peace, and the strength required to choose a better path. Yes, we are good at combat. We had to be to survive. But we are also good at cooperation, at innovation, at building bridges instead of burning them. Tyler stepped forward. You fear us because we are effective at war, but consider what we have actually done with that effectiveness. We could have used our military power to conquer, to dominate, to force others to submit to our will. We have not done any of that. Instead, we have chosen to protect, to cooperate, to build a safer galaxy for everyone. Does that not tell you more about who we are than our capacity for violence? Executor Zen pulsed thoughtfully. The humans make a valid point. We judge them by their potential for harm, rather than their actual actions. They have had many opportunities to abuse their position, yet they have not done so. Perhaps our fear is premature. The coordinator's tone softened slightly. We do not wish to be unjust, but you must understand, humans, that your abilities make you either the galaxy's greatest protectors or its most dangerous threat. The line between those two possibilities is very thin. Laura met the coordinator's gaze directly. Then watch that line carefully, because we intend to stay on the side of protection. We are not conquerors. We are survivors who learned that working together is stronger than fighting alone, and we are offering that spirit of cooperation to all of you, if you will accept it. The meeting ended without a final decision, but something important had happened. The galaxy's most powerful species had voiced their deepest concerns, and humanity had answered with honesty and resolve, not with aggression, not with excuses, but with truth. Over the following weeks, the debate continued across the galaxy. News networks discussed the human question endlessly. Some commentators called for restrictions on human expansion. Others argued that humanity deserved trust. The younger species, many of whom had benefited from human protection, increasingly saw Earth as an ally and friend. The older species remained cautious but were beginning to accept that humanity was here to stay. Then came the crisis that would settle the question forever. A wormhole opened in the outer reaches of explored space. Through it came a fleet of ships unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. They belonged to a species called the Rixians, who came from another galaxy entirely. The Rixians were aggressive, technologically advanced, and had no interest in peace. Their first act was to destroy a mining colony and demand the surrender of the entire sector. The Galactic Council held an emergency session. The older species argued about proper diplomatic protocols. They debated jurisdiction and discussed sending exploratory missions to learn more about the Rixians. While they talked, the Rixians prepared to attack another colony. Admiral Laura Grant did not wait for the council to finish debating. She assembled a human battle group and headed for the outer reaches at maximum speed. She did not ask for permission. She did not wait for authorization. People were in danger, and that was all that mattered. The human fleet arrived just as the Rixian armada was moving to attack their second target. Laura broadcast a simple warning. Leave this sector immediately or face the consequences. The Rixians responded by opening fire. The battle lasted 6 hours. The Rixians were powerful. Their weapons were advanced. Their ships were strong. But they had never encountered an enemy like humanity. The Rixians used straightforward tactics, relying on their superior technology. The humans used creativity and unpredictability. Every time the Rixians adapted to a human strategy, the humans changed their approach. When the Rixians tried to surround them, the humans scattered and reformed. When the Rixians concentrated their firepower, the humans used electronic jamming to disrupt their targeting. When the Rixians attempted to retreat, the humans cut off their escape routes. By the time ships from other council species arrived as reinforcements, the battle was already over. The Rixian fleet was fleeing back through their wormhole, battered and shocked by their defeat. The human fleet had lost only 2 ships, and both crews had evacuated safely before their vessels were destroyed. The galaxy watched recordings of the battle in stunned silence. Then the messages began flooding in, from the Valeth, from dozens of smaller species, from worlds that had never paid attention to Earth before. All of them said the same things. Thank you. We stand with you. Humanity has proven itself. The debate about humanity was over. They had shown that they would fight to protect others even without authorization. They had demonstrated tactical superiority against a powerful new threat. And they had done it all without conquest or cruelty. They were exactly what they claimed to be, protectors who would stand against any threat to the peaceful species of the galaxy. The species that had been overlooked had become the most feared and most respected civilization in the galaxy. And they had earned that position not through intimidation, but through courage, skill, and an unwavering commitment to doing what was right. 6 months after the battle with the Rixians, the Galactic Council assembled for a ceremony unlike any in recent memory. The Grand Chamber was filled to capacity. Every seat was occupied. Delegations from 1,000 worlds had come to witness this moment. Even species that rarely left their home systems sent representatives. Kate Morrison stood at the center of the chamber alongside Admiral Laura Grant and Commander Tyler Brooks. The 3 humans wore their formal uniforms, standing straight and proud. Around them, the most powerful beings in the galaxy watched with expressions ranging from approval to respect to something that might have been relief. Executor Jen's crystalline form pulsed with bright light as it spoke. Its voice filled the chamber, translated into 1,000 languages simultaneously. Today, this council recognizes a truth that has become impossible to deny. Humanity has proven itself worthy of full membership among the founding species. Therefore, we grant humanity all rights and responsibilities that come with this status. The chamber erupted in approval. Beings of all shapes and sizes expressed their agreement in their own ways. Some clapped. Others flashed lights. Some released pleasant scents into the air. It was a celebration of unity. Jen continued. Furthermore, we appoint Admiral Laura Grant as Supreme Commander of the Galactic Defense Initiative. She will coordinate all military operations across Council space. Her authority in matters of security will be second only to this Council itself. Even more applause followed. Laura bowed her head slightly, accepting the honor with grace. Kate felt a surge of pride. They had come so far from those early days of being ignored and dismissed. Humanity had earned its place through courage, skill, and an unwavering commitment to doing what was right. After the ceremony ended, the chamber slowly emptied as delegates returned to their ships and quarters. Lord Kravix approached Kate privately. His heavy footsteps echoed in the nearly empty space. Ambassador Morrison, may I ask you something? Of course, Lord Kravix, Kate replied. The large Krell leaned closer. When did you know? When did you realize that humanity would rise to this position? Kate smiled. The first day you dismissed us without listening. You see, being overlooked gave us the greatest advantage possible. It gave us time to prepare, to learn everything about this galaxy, to understand all of you before you understood us. By the time you finally noticed what we were doing, we were already ready for whatever came next. Kravix's armor rattled in what might have been laughter. Clever. Terrifyingly clever. Tell me honestly, Ambassador, what frightens you most about your own species? Kate's expression grew serious. That we might forget the lessons our history taught us. That we might become comfortable with power and stop questioning ourselves. That we might repeat the mistakes of our past. That is why we need this council, Lord Kravix. Not to restrain us, but to remind us why we chose this path. To keep us honest and focused on protection rather than domination. Kravix nodded slowly. Then perhaps the galaxy is in better hands than I initially feared. I hope you humans continue to live up to the trust we are placing in you. We will do our best, Kate promised. That night, Kate returned to the observation deck of the horizon's edge. She stood looking out at the stars, just as she had done months ago when everything felt hopeless. Tyler joined her, carrying 2 cups of coffee as he had before. Remember when you said being underestimated gave us room to grow? Kate asked, accepting the coffee. I remember, Tyler replied. You were right. But now nobody underestimates us anymore. Now everyone is watching. That comes with its own challenges, Tyler smiled. Then we better make sure we are worth watching. We have to prove every day that we deserve this position, that we can be trusted with this power. Kate nodded. Back on Earth, billions of humans were celebrating the news. Children would grow up knowing that humanity was respected among the stars, that humans were not just another minor species but protectors who stood against darkness. It was a legacy worth preserving. Laura Grant joined them on the observation deck, carrying her own cup of coffee. I just received word from the outer sectors. 3 more pirate groups have surrendered without a fight. They said they do not want to end up like the Krell Syndicate. Our reputation is doing half the work for us now. That is good news, Kate said. But we cannot become complacent. The Rixians might return, or some other threat might emerge. We have to stay ready, we will be, Laura assured her. I am setting up training programs with allied species, sharing our knowledge and learning from theirs, building a truly unified defense force. If another threat comes, we will face it together. The three of them stood in comfortable silence, looking out at the infinite expanse of stars. Each of them understood the weight of responsibility they now carried. Humanity had gone from being overlooked to being one of the most important species in the galaxy. That brought both opportunities and dangers. Throughout the galaxy, the story of humanity spread. It became something parents told their children. A tale about the species that nobody noticed until it was too late to ignore them. The species that turned being underestimated into their greatest advantage. The species that fought not for conquest but for protection. Young members of countless species looked at humanity with admiration. They saw proof that being small or overlooked did not mean being weak. They learned that determination and creativity could overcome raw power. They discovered that the choice to protect others was a form of strength all its own. The older species, the ones who had existed for millions of years, learned something too. They learned that wisdom did not always come with age. That sometimes the newest voice in the room had the most important things to say. That underestimating anyone was a mistake they could not afford to make again. Humanity had changed the galaxy forever. Not through war or domination, but through courage and determination. They had shown everyone what it meant to stand up for what was right, even when it was dangerous. They had proven that being feared and being respected could mean the same thing, as long as the fear came from your enemies and the respect came from your allies. Years would pass, decades, centuries. But the galaxy would always remember the time when humanity stepped out of the shadows. When the overlooked species became the most feared. When the quiet voices from the small blue planet rose to speak with authority that none could deny. Kate, Tyler, and Laura eventually retired from active service, but their legacy continued. New generations of humans took their places. New challenges arose and were met with the same creativity and determination. Humanity never forgot the lessons of their rise. They never forgot what it felt like to be dismissed and ignored. And they made sure that no other species would ever be overlooked the way they once were. The galaxy was safer because humanity had chosen to be its protector, and humanity was stronger because the galaxy had finally learned to respect them. It was a partnership built on mutual trust and shared purpose. It was everything that the early human diplomats had hoped for and more. On Earth, people looked up at the stars with pride. They knew that somewhere out there, human ships were keeping watch. Human diplomats were building bridges, human scientists were making discoveries, and human soldiers were standing ready to defend anyone who needed protection. The story of humanity was still being written. New chapters would be added, new adventures would unfold, but the foundation had been laid. The quiet species from the overlooked planet had become legends, and the galaxy would never forget the day when everything changed. The stars themselves seemed to shine brighter, as if celebrating what humanity had become, and in that light, the future looked full of endless possibilities.